Welcome. This is Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solution, and we are going to be talking about how to be able to advance your firm, especially if you have a team and you want them to really get up to the next level. So today's topic is beyond the checklist, building critical thinking in your team. And my conversation today is with Charity Hall from Rightworks. So you are in the right place if you recognize the difference between task execution and critical thinking in your team. You want to get some practical strategies to train your staff so that they are able to make advisory level decisions and to learn how to balance structure with strategic thinking across your workflow. So I'd suggest you get ready to take some notes, whether it's on a doc or pen and paper, because we're going to share a lot of practical tips, and then we're going to let you know how to connect with Charity as we wrap up today. So a little bit about Charity. Charity Hall is a growth and leadership strategist for accounting firms. She helps practitioners optimize staffing, expand service lines, and improve operations. As a coach with Rightworks, she leads webinars and workshops focused on practical, sustainable growth strategies that elevate both firm performance and team leadership. She has over a decade of experience in accounting, business advising, and leadership development, and Charity brings grounded insight to the real challenges that firm owners face. She is a certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor and holds a master's in management and leadership. And as a result, she makes a powerful resource for firms that are ready to grow with intention. And if you wanted to find out more about Charity Hall as well as Rightworks, Rightworks is rightworks.com, and you can get a lot of information there. So Charity, we've been talking about this topic for a while now, and I am so excited to dig in.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. This is one of my passion topics.
And before we get started, just share a little bit about how you got onto this path of helping firms with leadership development.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started working in a few different CPA firms myself as a financial accountant and realized that I wanted to have an impact on the industry as a whole. So that's how I ended up kind of transitioning into coaching and helping firms learn how to develop themselves, develop their staff, and it's become a real passion of mine.
Excellent. And as we look at this topic, we're going to start with the big picture and then start to narrow it down. So when you think about critical thinking in accounting, what does that really mean when we get beyond the surface level of just being good at the technical work?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Well, the technical skills and accuracy are like the baseline, right? That's where we have to start. But critical thinking goes beyond that. That's where we start to connect the dots, see patterns, and anticipate the needs of the clients. So it takes us from task doer into becoming a trusted advisor. And that is a development path that many staff need to be on that kind of a journey.
Okay, so one of the things that I'm hearing is that with the tasks, it's more doing after the fact accounting or bookkeeping, and it's maybe the compliance side of things. But as you're moving this direction, the critical thinking is really more future focused of how do you maybe take those insights of what you did for their financials and apply it to really help them move their business forward and use the numbers. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's moving beyond just a list where you're checking boxes into
Mhm.
being able to actually think about what you're doing and why it matters and how things connect to each other.
And one of the things I've heard you talk about is that you can be technically competent, but still end up missing the mark. So what are some signs that maybe someone is checking all those boxes, but they're not really thinking through the situation?
That's a great question. So when somebody is just going through checking boxes, they often may not be able to explain why something matters, why it's important. They might miss changes in client context. oftentimes they'll also be deferring all of their decisions to somebody else. So as a reviewer or a manager, you may find your staff, if your staff are saying, wasn't sure, I didn't feel comfortable making this decision, so I waited to ask you, I wanted to get your input, I wanted your review. Those are all signs that somebody is doing that very linear, just checking a box, thinking. Um, and they often see that checking the box and that completing of the task as the finish line. So they see that once that box is checked, there's no more thinking involved. Now they feel like the job is done, yay, but they don't take it one step further, which is actually into that critical thinking area.
hmm And as you're talking about it, what's coming up for me is that we all have different strengths that we bring to the work that we do. And is it possible that some people are really more aligned with being that doer and the technical side of things, and the critical thinking isn't something that they are that is weaker, or is that something that could be strengthened in almost anybody?
I see it as something that could be strengthened in almost anybody. A lot of times when I talk about critical thinking, I like to think of it like a muscle, right?
hmm
And just like people who use muscles in life, you have some who are naturally gifted, right? Naturally gifted athletes, naturally talented. Some people are naturally talented critical thinkers, and it comes very easy to them. But then there are people who can be an athlete, but they have to work really hard, maybe
hmm
like 3 times harder than someone that it's just a natural gift to. But they can still get there if they try and they work at it and they practice. And that's the same with critical thinking. If you try and you work at it and you practice, you can develop that in almost anybody.
Okay, Charity, I was at 40, I became a competitive rower, and I'm not
Love
a
it.
naturally gifted, talented athlete. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And you're right. If you put your mind to something, then it's something that can be strengthened, and you just find your way of doing it. So I really appreciate you using that analogy. Okay, so what I also hear then is the structure accuracy is so important when it comes to the numbers in somebody's business. So how do we start to make that space where the team is allowed to be able to maybe have strategic insights, and that they know that it's part of the big picture? So it might not be as clean and precise as they would like, but
Yeah.
it's very, very beneficial to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, structure isn't the enemy and checklists are not the enemy, but they're starting points, right? They're they're not scripts. It's not something that we have to absolutely stick to, but it is a starting point. And it's something that is definitely needed too. Um, but it's that incorporating space for thinking, like you said, Lauren, in that, checklist or even a self-review checklist, having open-ended questions at the end, like what changed from last year, right? If you're doing a tax return, or even if you're doing accounting, what changed from last month? How does this impact the tax return? How does this impact the financials? What is one thing the client could have done to decrease the amount of taxes that they owe or increase their return amount, right? And having those open-ended questions that staff then need to answer as part of that review process gives them space to think and to reflect on the work that they've just done. So it helps them connect some of those dots and some of those pieces and start to grow that critical thinking muscle.
What you're saying is really interesting, and I want to bring it up to the surface because there was some nuggets really hidden in there. Is that if there's someone who loves checklists, you can actually build these questions into the checklist at the end of their workflow, so they start to get used to thinking about that and having that as part of their process, and that's a way to be able to help them develop that skill set. Is that part of what you're suggesting also?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love checklists, but yeah, having those spaces at the end where you're asking those questions as part of their routine, it'll then become part of their routine to think as well, right? They can't check that box that it's all done until they've answered those questions.
Mhm. And the other part of it is that you can't expect them to start thinking it's a new activity that they've never done before. So they might forget doing it, and they might just do it for a while and then stop doing it because it's not something that's integrated into how they've been working this whole time.
Exactly.
So I think that creating a system where they are naturally going through these questions is going to be a win-win for everybody. And as a result of that, you're going to have team members eventually that stop coming to you for everything. And they start maybe and if they do come to you, they come to you and they can tell you, oh, I've tried this and I thought about this, but I'm still stuck.
Exactly. And that's the goal, right? We want team members who can think for themselves and who are confident in their thinking so that they are empowered to make decisions, and it doesn't all have to filter through one person, two people, anything like that. It kind of removes that bottleneck and empowers the staff to be able to step into more advisory roles themselves.
Okay, so any firm owner that is listening right now, you realize that you are the bottleneck because everybody comes to you for decisions and you don't know how to be able to train them to start thinking for themselves more because they might not have the confidence. We're telling you exactly what to do. So listen to what Charity's saying, go back, take some notes again, but we're giving you the exact steps to start to train your team so that when they come to you, they've already thought about angles. They're not coming to you for the angles of what to do first. So, okay, I know I probably jumped the gun because I got really excited about all this. Anything else that would help team members grow those judgment skills?
Yeah. We talked a little bit here about incorporating questions into review lists and checklists, but just in general, asking questions, right? Staff very regularly will go to leaders and say, what do I do here? What do I need to do? Like, just looking for that answers to be hand given to them, right? But the goal is to, as a leader, begin to play a little bit of ping pong with the questions, play some question ping pong. So they have served you a question and you're going to pivot back with another question. So you could ask them, what do you recommend? Or what would you do if I weren't here? And even, after they've made a decision, what worked, what didn't, what would you change? And, I've had team members come to me in the past and ask me to do things as simple as reviewing an email. Now, I'm happy to do that with new staff, right? Helping people feel comfortable. But at a certain point, it's time for the training wheels to come off. It's time for them to feel confident with their own emails. So I would ask them, if you were me, would you approve it? And then you kind of get their wheels turning and they're like, you know what? Yeah, I would. Or, maybe I wasn't quite as clear on this one point. I'll go back and adjust it. Right. And so that often can really help as well.
Okay. What I'm thinking about now is that you're explaining the difference between management and leadership. And management is where you're managing people, but they're still coming to you. They're not really thinking for themselves, whereas leadership is you're putting it back on them. So they can come to you and ask the question, but you're not necessarily going to give them the answer. You might direct them to go and figure out the answer to the question on themselves. So you're creating a lot more independence.
Exactly. And again, that's the goal. We want staff who are independent, who can think for themselves, who are more confident making judgment calls. And yeah, exactly.
I remember working with this one firm owner, and she was a little sassy at times. And when people were coming to her asking for the solutions, she would say, well, that's what I'm paying you to figure out.
That's one way to do it.
That is one way to do it. But if so one of the things I do see is that firm owners are also very busy, and sometimes they think that it's easier if they just did it themselves. There would be less interruptions. And they also might be someone who is a natural caregiver and everything like that. So if someone's like that people pleaser, but it's their firm and they found that everybody is coming to them, how do they start to develop that muscle to redirect their
Yeah,
staff?
yeah, absolutely. So I love that you described this. This feels like so many firm owners that I talk with, um, where, you know, they're maybe a little bit frustrated that their staff aren't displaying critical thinking, but at the same time, they are fixing mistakes. They are answering every question, and they're doing it out of, a kind place, right? Um, but what that really does is rob the staff member of an opportunity to grow and learn and develop on their own. So, as somebody who cares about your staff, I would encourage you to change that mindset, to challenge the mindset of, I'm caring about them by not having them fix their mistakes, because it's actually the opposite.
Mhm.
It is hurting them. It is not giving them the opportunity to develop and grow. It's taking away their confidence in their decision-making skills and in their ability to get things done right. They then start to feel dependent on you, like you have to be involved all of the time in order for work to get done. And that just creates a whole new avalanche of challenges, right?
Mhm. And the other part that happens is if you are the main person everybody's going to with their questions, then it affects your ability to scale your business.
It does.
It's almost impossible to scale when you're the main spoke in the wheel enmeshed in the day-to-day operations like that. So with that thought, any exercises or scenarios that help to improve decision making across the board with everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we talked about the open-ended questions,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also, the opportunity to take real client situations and debrief as a team. What went well? What didn't go well? What might we do differently next time? And even why didn't it go well if it didn't? What caused that to happen? Um, and if it did go well, what can we do to make sure that this happens again? Right? And then case studies or scenario-based training. So um, even having the staff pretend to be a client, right? Um, and say if you were a client and you were given, this is what you were given by our firm, how would you feel about it? What questions would you have? Because that again puts them in that mindset of looking at the things from the client's perspective, seeing both sides so that they might understand what client questions will be. So there are a lot of different ways that you can really, really incorporate that. And a nice way to make this a habit is, a lot of firms have a weekly team meeting or firm-wide meeting monthly, something like that. Incorporating a time in there that's a what I could have done differently team discussion, right? And you can have anonymous scenarios, you can make up hypothetical scenarios, you can use real ones from your firm, but the goal is to get people thinking and talking and discussing and really using their brains to think beyond that checklist.
Mm-hmm. I think that what you're bringing up is a really powerful point because when my husband Steve and I we had our agency with a team of 11, we had weekly staff meetings, and part of the staff meeting wasn't just the things about the business itself, but where a team member can bring maybe a particular file and talk about it with everybody at the round table to get different ideas as to what would be in the best interest of that client. So it's effective. It works. If you haven't done it before, it's a great way to get everybody's brains involved. And it just opens up to such rich conversation. So I really appreciate you bringing that up as a point. And the other part that you mentioned was doing what I call a 360. So after the fact, and this is what athletes do also, which you mentioned before, is you do a review. What went well? And what didn't go well? Because even if there's an outward failure, there's so many things that went successfully within that failure, even though you didn't get the outcome that you wanted. And I think it's important to recognize the successes that happen, even though the outcome wasn't exactly what you wanted. So I appreciate you bringing up those three questions of what went well, what didn't work, and what could be improved for the next time around so that you're learning from it. Because I don't know about you, but some of my best learning opportunities came on the heel of a failure.
Yes, absolutely. A failure is painful,
Mhm.
but it makes the lesson so much more real, and it
Mhm.
really sticks in our heads then.
Okay, let's talk about the firm owners that want to maybe get their junior staff into those advisory conversations, and it feels intimidating with them, which is what I'm doing right now with one of my clients and their firm. So how do you maybe start to bring them into the advisory without maybe overwhelming them or having it be a lower quality than what you want to deliver?
Yeah, absolutely. So first I would start slow. If they're used to just doing checklists, you have to start them with thinking, right? So that's those open-ended questions. But another way to do it or continue that training and developing of that muscle is let them shadow and take notes. But you can even reverse shadow, right? So normally when we talk about job shadowing, we talk about a junior person going in and shadowing a senior person, right? But you can also do it the other way around. You can have the senior person who maybe has more of that critical thinking, that advisory service mindset built in already. You can have them shadow the junior person and
Mm-hmm.
ask them questions about things as they're going through, like, why did you group those transactions together? Or what do you think the client could have done differently to improve XYZ, right? As they're going through to, again, foster that ability to not only complete a task, but look at it and analyze it and come out with answers. So, in short, the way to do it is have them practice it. Have them practice it. If you have a specific style of advisory that your firm does, right? Let's say that you have specific KPIs that you're always looking at and you're advising businesses on those. Have your junior staff member take some of those on, even if it's just hypothetical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have them take some of those on, have them practice it, have them practice giving that advisory consultation. And you can pretend as the firm owner or as the senior to be the client, right? That way they get some of that actionable experience with the low pressure situation and you can give them feedback right there.
Mm-hmm. Uh, and one of the things that I'm hearing as well is that you're now developing your staff. And there is research out there that shows staff actually want to have professional development. And the more that you're investing in helping them grow professionally, the more loyal they are. So think about the staffing problems out there. This is going to keep someone with you longer because you're investing with them, and you're gonna end up having a more loyal team as well. So is that one of the byproducts that you see that comes out of training your staff in this direction to be critical thinkers as well?
Absolutely. When staff feel, like you said, when staff feel like you're investing in them, they invest back in you because they
Mm-hmm.
want to work someplace where they feel seen, where they feel appreciated, and where they can grow and shine, right? So helping them develop critical thinking does all of that, and it helps move them forward in their careers as well. So they end up, yes, having significantly more loyalty to the firms who are
Mm-hmm.
helping achieve those goals.
And the other part is that you're now creating a system, and I believe that systems give you freedom. So even advisory services can be systematized to a degree so that it's a similar experience no matter who's stepping into that role. And it gets you out of being the only one that can offer that. Okay,
Absolutely.
AI, definitely a trending topic. It is changing the way that firms are doing business. And there's so many people that see a week coming happening, but some see it as a threat and others see it as an enhancement. So AI, at least at this point, is at the thinking, even though it looks like it can. So how can it be something that maybe supports moving this direction as opposed to replacing staff?
Yeah, I love that. So I like to think of AI kind of like our steering, right, with a car. It makes steering it a little bit easier. It helps with supporting completing the repetitive tasks, but it doesn't replace thinking. So if AI is the power steering, you still need humans to drive it. You still need humans to drive the car. You need humans to read the signs and make the turns and see where we're going and be able to make those, forward thinking advisements for
Hmm.
clients. And that's something that AI can do little things, but it can't do the whole thing. That's why you need humans still. Absolutely.
And I think that that's something that we've all seen is AI is only as good as the prompts that you give it.
Yes.
So if you're
Yeah.
giving it really poor prompts, it's going to give very low level responses. But if you give better prompts, you get something that's more unique to the situation. And I'm bringing it up because I think similar to AI and the level of the prompts applies to how you develop your team as well. Maybe you just need to give your team better prompts that are more specific, and
Yes.
then it'll help them to develop too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So firm and workflow, they're all about the workflow. And is it that you want the team to maybe slow down and analyze things more deeply, as opposed to what they've been doing, which is kind of like running on autopilot?
So I think that there are spaces within the workflow where they can slow down. There are places where they probably shouldn't. Um, there are some things that are so basic that they can be automated even with AI, right? But then there are things where looking at like a client's goals, looking at the context, looking at, changes that a client has experienced. Have they hired somebody new? Are there new service lines, new rental properties? Those are areas that should make a staff member stop and pause and think and say, what needs to happen? Are we missing something? What else might be true here? Not just, is it all technically correct? So when client data feels off, even if the numbers add up, if something looks odd, maybe they've given you a statement that you hadn't seen before, and it might have like mortgage, principal, and interest on there, and you're like, hey, hold on a second, this wasn't here before. So what has changed? Use those as gut check moments because it may look right, but does it make sense? And do you have everything that you need to put the full picture together, right? What's the story behind the numbers?
I love the story behind the numbers. One of the things that, as they're doing this and starting to analyze and ask more questions, is it could lead to scope creep, where they're now doing more work, but they're not getting compensated for it. So, how do we maybe help them to have more of this critical thinking, but also make sure that we're getting compensated for the additional things that we're doing for our clients?
Oh, that's great. Um,
I
I
know
would
I'm putting
say
you on the
that
spot with
no,
that, Charity, but
no,
it's a
that's good.
reality,
It's
right?
good. It is a reality. So I would say that it needs to be a balance, right? There's a fine line between um, going above and beyond and providing great service, which we want to do, right? And then, like you said, scope creep, which is when things, when our staff are maybe spending so much time doing
Mhm.
analysis, but our clients aren't paying for that analysis. So there does need to be a balance. I would say starting the clients off or starting your staff off, training them on clients who already have advisory services being paid for and compensated is probably a good strategy. And or understanding that as you're training your staff on these things, there may be some non-billable time,
Mhm.
right? So I wouldn't necessarily be using the time that staff are training themselves essentially on advisory services to necessarily deliver free advisory to clients. I don't recommend that. Um, but it is still a good opportunity for them to stretch their muscles.
Mhm.
So um, I would say in terms of scope, only bill and only use them for billable hours on client where it's included in the scope. When it's not, Don't. You said
Mhm.
as consider that like a
Right.
training investment time.
And it's a reality for so many firms. So I want to make sure that we're not giving away something that's very high
Yeah,
value because they do it too much anyway. We don't want to add
I
to that.
agree. We don't want to add to that. Absolutely not.
We
Hey,
want to
bill for
contain
your
it.
time.
Okay. And on the other hand, though, what this could be is if there's a potential for someone and one of your staff members see this and they don't have advisory services, it might open up a conversation with
Yes,
that client to discuss adding this in because you see some ideas that might improve their business flow. And as a result, you'll end up being able to do a higher level of service for someone who wasn't receiving it, and that increases the value of a client. So there's many different ways to approach this, but the bottom line is, I know you're already generous as a firm owner. We don't want to give away even more high value services. We want to
agreed,
contain that.
agreed. But I love what you said there, Lauren, about like about how staff might be able to spot those. I think with staff being boots on the ground, right? Elbows deep in client work every month. If you talk about accountants and every year when you talk about your tax prep, they are able to spot those areas where you can increase your services
Mm-hmm.
to those clients. And you might find a lot of little nuggets pop up as you start training people on that critical thinking. They might notice a lot of them, like, hey, there are 5 clients here that could all use some advisory services. And then you have a nice way to reach out to your clients and say, you're working on your books, and we think that you would be a great fit for these advisory services.
So this is being proactive. And for the firm owners out there that have had this experience listening, think about the time when you saw your client engage a consultant and pay a lot of money for that. And you're thinking, I could have done that for them. You didn't educate them about what was possible. So now you have what's possible, and it's up to you to seize that opportunity and educate them that you might be able to do this for them so that they use you, and they'll probably get a better service anyway with better insights because you already know their books, as opposed to engaging a very expensive, premium priced, high level consultant.
So true.
Okay, if someone is listening to us and they love this idea of being able to build the critical thinking skills for their team and having some of their team step into more of that advisory role, so what's one action step that they can actually start with right now?
I love that. So we've talked about a little bit here with shifting communication habits, starting to ask open-ended questions like, what do you think? How would you explain it to a client? What else might be true here? So the open-ended questions help shift people from task doing into thinking, and that's what we really want. So teams are going to need something to think critically about. And again, that could be some of those client role play moments, right? Where you
Mm-hmm.
bring in those real life examples. But you might also want to think about um, possibly connecting with like a community that has conversations going all of the time as well, right? Because that can lead to different perspectives from staff and owners. It can lead to new tools and more examples of real world challenges, which you can then
Mm-hmm.
take and bring them to your team to connect and talk about them together. And there are some really great spaces out there for accountants to connect, share ideas, and grow.
Oh, okay, so you gave us 3 action steps that we could take,
Yes,
depending on which one you want to start with. Uh, Critical thinking questions, you can just add those right onto the workflow in strategic places. Possibly role play, which most people don't really like doing because it feels very on the spot and they can't think on the spot like that. But it is definitely something that works. It's like doing a dress rehearsal if you're an actor. And then the other one is being part of maybe a larger community of other firm owners that are just like you. And these conversations are already happening. And that not only do you get to bring some of your questions of how to do this, but you get to hear from others about how they're doing it also. And it might spark some new ideas for you or just give you the courage that if they can do this, you can do this with your team as well.
absolutely. Absolutely. So firm owners and staff, you know, everybody needs a place to have that connection to bounce ideas off and things like that.
Charity, you've been so generous with sharing some ways to start developing the critical thinking skills, leading towards advisory services within the team, and being able to raise the bar as far as the level of services that a firm owner is able to offer its clients. So some of the things we covered is recognizing the difference between task execution and critical thinking within your team, getting those practical strategies to train staff for advisory level decision making, which is going to be a win-win-win all around for you, your firm, your team, the clients, and learning how to balance structure with strategic thinking across your workflow. So if somebody wanted to reach out and have a further conversation, find out more about what it is that you offer, as well as Rightworks, what's the best way for them to connect?
All right, I love that you asked that. So I mentioned communities, right? I'm actually helping to build out the Rightworks community, which is a space for accounting professionals to come together, learn and grow, find amazing experts like Lauren, who will help lead them through various challenges. And so if you'd like to get in touch and learn more about our community, you can check out rightworks.community.com. And that's a landing page. It'll take you right there. You can learn a little bit about us, and feel free to join our community if you would like. We have a free option for anyone who wants to come in and join and participate. We'd love to hear your voice.
Excellent. So it's rightworks.community.com. If you
Yep.
want to try it out, there is a free option to get engaged right away with the community. And Charity, if somebody wanted to find out about how you're working with Rightworks and the coaching that you're doing, the leadership development, is there a way for them to best connect with you too?
Yep. You can right in there in the Rightworks community, there's actually a little option to message somebody. So you can message me right through the community. I will be happy to talk to you. I would love to give you more information. Again, this is a passion of mine, so I love helping folks work on developing their staff development programs, and business strategy. So yeah, absolutely.
Your passion shows up very loud and clear.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Anyway, thank you for the engaging conversation. And for everybody that joined us today, this is Warren Fogelman with Business Success Solutions, showing accounting firm owners how to be able to double their income working half the time.